Yeah, can you say what this? I listen to all 3 of his podcasts, but can you explain this again? I don't remember.
Yeah, so what he was explaining, he's like, basically, I was like, don't you think that it's right? Julian Assange was just basically exposing like the most fucked up secrets that should be exposed to like create more of a balance in the world, right? Like you should, if someone's committing such a fucked up atrocity and hiding it, what is the harm in exposing it to make them better and make them start being more accountable for their actions, to create more of a balance across nations?
Yes.
And he goes, no. I'm like, why? He's like, and then he said, do you have kids? And I'm like, yeah, of course I have kids. He's like, well, do you tell your kids everything that you do? And I'm like, okay, I kind of see where you're going with that.
I remember this now.
And then he's like, he started explaining the hierarchy or the pyramid of a state, the formation of a state. He's like, if we're all free roamers, he's like, I could club you over the head, take your wife, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if we form a tribe, now you're protected by your tribe. So we can go out and we can kill the food, and the wives can stay home and pick the berries. And if somebody comes in and tries to steal one of our wives, you have the power of the tribe to protect us and take care of each other. Yeah. And then he's like, once you get above the tribe, you have the creation of the state. And he's like, when you have that, you know,
he called it like a pyramid, right?
He called it a pyramid, yeah. And he started to explain it, and it made a lot of sense. He's like, and then the other point he made, which I don't know if this is true or not, because I know there's a lot of like he said, she said, and there's a lot of, it's hard to know the truth. But he said that Julian Assange wasn't fair with the shit that he exposed. He said he only exposed American shit.
Yeah.
If he would have exposed Chinese and Russian shit just as much as he exposed American shit, it wouldn't be, he might not have that same position on Julian Assange, that same view on him. But he was only anti-American.
People should turn off this podcast real quick and go listen to that latest one you did with him.
Yeah.
If you have it, because that was an unbelievable podcast. The last one you just did on like Ukraine and all that.
Yeah.
Where this conversation happened. That podcast, like, I was thinking about that one a lot, and I didn't understand the word you were saying, like the levels of society. But once you started explaining that, this was one of the key moments of the podcast where I was like,
"Yeah,
whoa!"
His point was like right now, everyone is like, we're losing our freedoms. We're losing our freedoms, and we don't have freedom of speech. We don't have this freedom to do that. We're wearing our masks. We're taking my freedoms, and you know, he's like, you have to. The only people that are truly free is that tribe on that island and off the coast of Africa that have nothing but spears. And he's like, you have to, if you want to be a part and participate in this community that we've created, you have to be okay with giving up freedoms.
You know what his argument was? It was the ultimate swallow the pill argument. Like, that's how I pictured it. Because it was a galaxy brain argument that maybe they came up at the CIA headquarters, and he very well retweeted it himself there. I don't know. But I like how that guy talks. I appreciate how blunt he is. I mean, he really says a lot of shit on your podcast that similarly to Jim, from his perspective and whatever, I'm like, wow, like, I can't believe he's saying that. But that one sent me spinning. Because it's and I could see, like, let's assume he is speaking for the good people at the CIA or in the government, right? And I always try to use this example, but you have to remember these agencies, for every 10 people who are in the room, 9 of them might be great people who are like there for the right reasons, good people, all about freedom of America, trying to do their job to protect our interests, even if once in a while, like, they overstep something, they don't think of it that way, and they're not going after domestic people, you know, and they're trying to protect, like, their intentions are good. But if you have one bad person out of those 10, that's all it takes. You know, like, oh, now we're allowed to do this, we're going to take it a mile farther, which is what Edward Snowden talked about. And that's why I disagree with a lot of Andrew's overall opinions on guys like Snowden and Assange. However, I appreciate that he doesn't. There was one argument that's the usual lazy argument with Snowden, like, he did the right thing the wrong way. I've heard that one before. But the rest of it, he makes you think, because he's putting the ball in your court and saying, well, which one do you want? Like, you can't, and I guess the point is, he tells you, unfortunately, there's nothing that exists that is 100%. And actually, in the scope of the world, he's right about that. It's like, there's good and there's bad. You're never going to have a perfect situation. So he's saying, are you willing to give up a couple of these things, which immediately, when you say, are you willing to give up? A bunch of people out there go, you will not infringe on my rights.
Exactly,
like,
exactly.
Right away. Like, fuck this deep state shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know why I do that in a Southern accent, but it's always funnier.
Because they all have Southern accents.
Yeah, I guess. but like, you know, freedom! They immediately go to that. But his intent with that, like, you just laid out what he said on Assange. He is statistically right that Assange's stories more target, or the ire, is the United States government. Mm-hmm. Now here's the double edge of that. On the one hand, you want to be honest to improve, right? You can say, hey, we're great. This is a great place. Democracy, freedom, America, we love it. But we want to fix some things too. We don't do everything right. So how do you do that? You draw attention to it. How do you draw attention to it? A guy like Julian Assange exists and draws attention to it. At the CIA, you recognize that all these other countries around the world, they don't have these out-of-bounds lines to play.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So who are you trying to protect the American people against every day? Trying to protect them against China, against Russia, name the big countries, right, who don't have these rights. And you know that if China doesn't like something that's said, they just kill you. Mm-hmm. And you're pissed off because China, just using that example, they're the biggest one, communist government, doesn't have freedom of speech, doesn't have all this shit. What do? They use their money and their influence to take advantage of the fact that we do. So we can share this stuff. And so then it puts the focus on us and makes us divide from within, rather than keeping the focus on them and killing people for stealing a chocolate bar. Or not preventing or not allowing people to say the words Houston Rockets on social media because Daryl Morey said something about Hong Kong. Right? So now the focus comes on the American citizens are online talking about America. And again, for the right reasons. We want to improve things that are bad. But then the CIA or these other places realize that then the focus is off the target. And they want to get the focus back on the target. And they just want people to shut the fuck up and know that, like, hey, we're going to fix a few of these things, even if they're not, which is the danger, right? Like, it took 11 years before Edward Snowden was the guy who came out and said something. No one ever said anything. They violated the Constitution.
Right.
Thanks to Dick Cheney for like 11 years.
Patriot Act.
Yes. Started with that, went to Stellar Wind, boom, 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 boom. And finally someone said, okay, we're going to talk about this, right? And so that's why, like, his side note, his argument about he did the right thing the wrong way, number one, I'll bet there were at least a couple people who brought that up before the right way. You never heard from them. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were never heard from again.
True.
Right?
I also don't see how that gives countries like Russia or China an advantage over us, or how it puts us in danger to those countries by saying that the U.S. government's spying on its own people. He's
saying that by holding our government to a way higher standard than we hold theirs, because it's here, it's on our turf, it's our people. We're all about optimism, freedom, democracy. By doing that, you are taking away our ability to keep our eye on the prize and do our job and operate in a way that, by the way, includes fucking up elections and putting other people in office. Like the same shit we accuse people of doing here, which they do interfere in our election process through like the internet and things like that. Like as far as Russia and China will put out all kinds of social media information to get people talking. Like, this is backed by data. Renee DeRest has been on every podcast in the world talking about it.
Right.
Like, we act like, oh, they're the only ones doing that. But we do that too. Mm-hmm. And when we're doing it, this is where good and evil, it's like, well, what is good and evil? Is it good? You know, if we stop like some crazy dictator from going into power, that's supposed to be good, right? But what if we're not good? Mm-hmm. It's like, it gets really complicated. And so what he's saying is, if you make us play to such a higher standard in the intelligence universe, the under the ground, like, spooky stuff, we're going to lose to these guys because they don't have to play by those rules.
Right.
And as much as I disagree with the idea, because I'm very glad I love what Edward Snowden did. Very much a brilliant reporting, by the way, by Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras and everything. I love that we got that. Wish we did more with it as a people. Kind of forgot about it. But, you know, it's hard for me to not also understand where he's coming from with that. You know, and
right.
So I get here and I'm like, and this happens all the time with me. It probably drives some people nuts when they listen to the podcast and we have issues like this. Like, I see it both ways. I really do. Like, that's my curse in life. Like, I don't really...
It can be both ways. Both things can be true, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. But that was... you getting him to lay that out, that was like some of the best podcast content I've ever heard. Because I was like, I was walking my dog and I didn't realize we were like 7 miles into the walk. I didn't even know where the fuck I was. And I'm just like thinking about, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go back. But it was just like, you have to give it to him. He laid out a very difficult which pill you taking scenario. Doesn't mean he's right. But I also couldn't definitively say he's all wrong.